Why does YouTube pay Africans less money compared to YouTubers from other parts of the world? This is what we are going to be exploring in this episode, from why the YouTube money you get fluctuates to why advertisers are not interested in the African market. Now, before we start, it's really important to note that when it comes to getting paid on YouTube through Adsense, YouTube is actually a middleman. It connects advertisers to creators' audiences. At the end of the day, the ad money that you're getting, it's not from YouTube, but it's from the advertisers that are paying to advertise on YouTube. The money that advertisers are willing to pay comes down to the audience that you have as a creator. Do the advertisers find your audience that you've created valuable? If yes, then you're going to get more ad money, and if not, then. And when it comes to the professional terms that are used in the AdSense payments, it's called CPM, which is cost per mil, cost per 1,000 views. This essentially means for you to get any kind of money from YouTube ads, first of all, you need to be monetized on YouTube, of course. You need to have attained 4,000 watch hours and have gotten 1,000 subscribers. And once you are in the YouTube partner program, for every 1,000 views that you get, you'll get a cut of the ads that were served on those 1,000 views. It is the advertisers that set the CPM. And this is why you always notice that as a YouTuber, even if you're getting the consistent number of the views month in, month out, it doesn't mean that you're going to get the same amount of money. And this is because advertisers are not spending the same amount of advertising dollars throughout the year. When it comes to things like the holidays, then they'll spend more money. And then of course, they're always valuing geography. And this is one of the things that hugely affects African creators. Advertisers can always choose where they want their ads to be served. Another reason why your CPM keeps changing really depends on the type of content format that you're producing on YouTube. The CPM for short form content is very different from long form content. The way the AdSense is calculated is not the same as the long form content. When you're watching a long form video, you have different kinds of ads that are being served per video. There's the ads at the start of the video, in between, or even at the end of the video. But when it comes to YouTube Shorts, it's actually impossible to do that because the video is already short. What you actually see in YouTube Shorts is when you're scrolling, you will find an independent ad that is in between two YouTube Shorts. YouTube takes all the AdSense money that they get from the YouTube Shorts, they put it in one bucket. They're calling it pooling. They're pooling that money in one bucket. They take a portion of that money and they're paying for music licensing, and then the remaining money, they're dividing that according to the total number of views that someone got from their YouTube Shorts per country. Unless your shorts are consistently getting millions of views, it's really hard for you to actually earn serious money. To get a little bit of an understanding about what's happening on the brand side when they're setting the CPM, this is actually something that I've done while working in the corporate world, serving paid ads, a big part of marketing. When it comes to setting the price for CPM, it's actually a bidding war, an auction of some sort. So one brand will decide it wants to pay $2 per 1,000 views, an audience that is interested in makeup but is based in an African country. But you also find that the same brand is setting CPM of like $8 for someone who is interested in makeup but based in the United States. And this basically comes down to advertising value. As the advertisers think of the audience that they are targeting as valuable to them. But it's not just that, it's also about the competition of advertisers. The more advertisers you have trying to reach the same audience, the CPM is gonna get higher. That is essentially one of the reasons why a lot of people in many other countries that are not African countries are earning a lot of money from even a small number of views on YouTube, because they have a lot of advertisers trying to fight for the attention. But when it comes to Africa, that's a whole different story. There are different factors that are making a lot of advertisers not target African audiences, especially using these new digital forms of advertising. First one is low purchasing power. If you're looking at the statistics, we know very well that the poverty rate in a lot of African countries is very, very high. In Kenya, for example, poverty rate is 39%. A lot of people do not have the disposable income to be buying or paying for whatever, because let's be honest, a lot of the things that are being sold in the market are not necessary things. And in a lot of African countries, a lot of people are still struggling to meet their basic needs. They don't even have time to be thinking about the latest trend. And even if they want to buy into that latest trend, they're looking for the counterfeit products that are the cheapest. So a lot of advertisers, they don't think that a lot of African audiences are valuable to them because they can't afford their products anyway. And even if we take Kenya, for example, when you look at a lot of businesses that are made in Kenya, they don't even target the Kenyan audiences. They're constantly targeting the immigrants or expats from Western countries who have come to live in Nairobi, or targeting the Kenyans who are living in the diaspora because they're the ones that have the purchasing power. So because a lot of advertisers do not think that a lot of African audiences have the purchasing power to buy their products, they do not spend a lot of money in trying to reach their African audience. And when they do, the CPM is so low. At the end of the day, you might find that even if you're getting 100,000 views from your majority African audience, you cannot compare that with someone who is getting the same number of views but living in the United States. This is why one of the things that a lot of Africans should be pushing for is the creation of employment, creation of business environment that encourages people to innovate, because this means that a lot more people are going to have money to spend on things. And when people have disposable income to spend on things that are not basic needs just because they're trying to survive, then advertisers will find them valuable. Taking the example of the matcha craze that is taking the world by storm, a lot of people in African countries cannot participate in that because a lot of people do not have the extra money to think about, oh, I should try this new matcha. As long as they have tea that they can drink and then they can go about their day trying to find money for the food they're going to eat the next day, they do not have time to be thinking about this matcha trend that is going on. Of course, this doesn't mean that all Africans don't have the purchasing power. The percentage is just so low. Even in a country like Kenya right now, the number of people earning $1,000 per month is so low that it's something that is considered newsworthy. But only about 10% of the population. That's why you're always finding that a lot of made in Africa brands are so expensive and you're wondering who is buying this. But it's because African business owners understand that in a lot of African countries, if you want to be profitable, either you're producing products for the high-end consumer or for the low-end consumer. It's basically very hard for you to create a successful business that is based on mid-range products. Another factor that affects CPM of many people in African countries is how people are watching videos. This is also linked to internet access. While in a country like Kenya, there is widespread internet access, a lot of people cannot afford the cost of internet. And again, this goes back to the fact that we have a high poverty rate and a lot of people are still trying to meet their basic needs. This means that even when people are spending money on the internet and not paying for Wi-Fi for the entire day, they have a limited budget, and what most of them do, especially when they are watching YouTube videos, is that they download the videos so that they can watch them later and also offline. And when someone downloads your video to watch it offline, normally it doesn't have ads. That means a lot of African creators are not getting money because a lot of audiences cannot afford to watch their videos online and they have to download them so they can watch them offline. This is why as YouTubers, as African YouTubers, it should be on your agenda to remind elected representatives to provide free Wi-Fi so that people can actually sit down and watch your video online and you can get those ad dollars. But you might be wondering, why are African companies not advertising or targeting their African audiences? This is majorly because of the fact that a lot of African companies today are still very hesitant when it comes to digital advertising. It's actually something that I find to be absolutely shocking. There are so many executives who are actually the key decision makers in a lot of companies in Africa who think advertising on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok is not important, and they just focused on holding on to traditional media. They want to keep on spending money on billboards, even though no one is looking at billboards, because a lot of people who are even walking on the streets are on their phones. And even the funny thing that I've been seeing recently in Kenya is that there are some brands that are willing to spend money on billboards, but they're making these billboards so controversial such that it ends up creating discussions online. The fact that the only way people are discussing your billboard is when they see it on Twitter to tell you that the place that you should be targeting with your advertising is the digital media platforms, because that is where people are. But they're still very resistant. A lot of these executives are people who are older, and unfortunately when it comes to a lot of African countries, a lot of older generations always think they're right, and they're also very resistant to change, and they also don't listen to young people. And unfortunately when it comes to this era of digital media and even digital advertising, because these are forms that are heavily being adopted by young people, it definitely means that the people that actually have the power, especially when it comes to the allocation of how money is spent, because they don't think that the new media that the young people are interested in are important, they're not allocating money in ensuring that they also exploit these digital forms of media. That's why you're ending up with lower number of advertisers when it comes to digital forms of advertising. That also means that creators are not getting a lot of money because the competition that would enable advertisers to spend a lot of money on advertising is actually not there. And even when I look at the influencer industry in Kenya, it's something that is up and coming, but it's also an industry that is heavily dependent on brand sponsorships. What we are seeing is that because a lot of these brands are really hesitant when it comes to embracing change and embracing new media, a lot of them are not even interested in understanding that influencer marketing is different from traditional marketing. And you are finding that a lot of brands are trying to force influencers to create ads like TV ads. They don't want to trust that influencers know what they're doing. At the end of the day, a lot of these brands, they see an influencer who is big, they want to target that audience, but they want to be in control of that influencer. They want to tell that influencer what to do, how to do it. You see the ad that the influencer is putting out on their page, and it's the complete opposite of the DNA of that influencer. It doesn't end up resonating with the audience that this brand was actually trying to reach in the first place. This just comes down to this resistance to change, this resistance to actually sit down and be humble, acknowledge that just because you've been in the industry for longer doesn't mean that you have all the answers. This is something that is deeply lacking, unfortunately, in a lot of African societies, and it's impacting business. This lack of curiosity is not helping anyone. I've just been filming here, and there were some children that were nearby and they saw me filming, and instead of them actually being curious about what I'm doing, because I have my setup here, my laptop with my script, my tripod and my phone, instead of them being curious, what is she doing, and even asking, because I'm not gonna bite, they just started trying to distract me and making funny noises. This is something that is actually very common in the African context. Even until now, when you tell someone that you're a YouTuber or create content on TikTok or Instagram, people see you as someone who is unserious. They tell you to look for a serious job. Again, because of this resistance to change, there's rigidity when it comes to embracing new things. A lot of people want to live in the past. That's not helping anyone. Because you see, if these small children are not even curious about what I'm doing day in, day out, in this day and age, they're being told in school to work hard so that they can have a job. There's huge disconnect, because it means that the adults are actually not thinking about the world of now and the world of the future, and are not preparing children for that world. That's exactly why we have rising cases of unemployment in a lot of African countries, because a lot of people in power do not know how to cater to the world of today, and they're actually not interested in listening to the people who have the answers. And what essentially they're telling us right now is just go to other countries and look for jobs. A lot of these people who are in power, who actually have the financial power to create change in our societies, they need to be people who are curious. They need to be people who are embracing innovation, who are embracing new technology, and people who can always create opportunities for young people to exploit these digital forms of technology and media. And unless that happens, unfortunately, this is going to be a problem that persists in all areas. It's just not affecting African YouTubers, it's actually affecting everyone.